Right, all praise, glory, honor, and thanks goes first and foremost to the Most High Yahuwah. Also, shalom, shalom to my people out there who are taking the time to listen right now. I appreciate you for that. Once again, I'm one of the children of the Most High. And this video is called, What or Who is the Church According to the Book? That's right. The purpose of this video is to address the fact that there are many nations, as well as tens of thousands of denominations, all out there that call themselves the true church that is described within the book known as the Bible. However, when you read the text found within this book known as the Bible, and you go through the volume of this scripture, you find a very clear description as to what or who the true church actually is. So here in this part one of the series, we're going to be calling out the church. That's right. We're going to identify the true church. So let's get started. And in fact, in order to start, we should come from a very fundamental understanding that many people, when they hear the word church, automatically think of a physical building. That's right, a physical location that they would report to. In fact, there are many people who feel this sense of guilt, or they feel like they're backsliders if they do not report to this specific physical location at least once a week, or in accordance to whatever their schedule of services is. Now, anyone with this mindset, I would direct to the book of Acts, chapter 7. There you're going to find that one of our ancestors, and when I say one of our ancestors, I'm speaking of one of the ancestors of our people who are being called Negroes today. Those of us who are the true Israelites who are spoken to and about throughout the volume of the book known as the Bible. You're going to find that one of our ancestors who had the name of Stephen, and yes, as a sidebar, I need to explain that our ancestors indeed did go by names like Stephen. In fact, Stephen is a Greek name. So when you go into the history of our people, you will find that the Israelites, our people of Yashvael, had been held under oppression to the Greeks for a long period of time. In fact, as early as 332 BC, you're going to find that the Greeks had actually started to encroach on our territories around that time, and they started to exert more and more authority and more oppression and control over our people. And that control lasted for a period of over 200 years. So when you understand that history, then you would understand how our people have taken on many of the customs, the traditions, and even the names of those Greeks who oppressed us. In fact, it's no different than what you find under our American captivity today. You'll find that many of our people today are around us with British names, for instance. People around us who are our kinfolk have names that actually came from those of our oppressors. They have different European names that definitely do not tie back to our true culture of origin. In fact, you can even look at your grandparents or your great-great-grandparents or your great-great-great-grandparents, and you'll find that many of them carry names that were either British or they have some other form of European labeling. So this is very important for us to be aware of, because what we are experiencing today as a people is nothing that is strange to our ancestors. They have actually been through this already, but on a much more severe scale in many cases. In fact, to get back to what was going on in this passage of Acts chapter 7, our ancestor Stephen was actually giving a form of oral tradition. Now, oral tradition is also still huge amongst our people. This is the way we have been transmitting or carrying forth our social, cultural, and historical information from generation to generation. In fact, the Most High commanded our people to speak oral tradition and to carry on our information that way. So this is very important for us to be aware of, because as you go into chapter 7, that's exactly what our ancestor Stephen was doing. In fact, he had gone all the way from the point of our father Abraham up to the days of Moshe. And as he got to Moshe, he described to our people how Moshe indeed was that man who was in the church in the wilderness with the messenger from the Most High who spoke to him at the Mount Sinai. So let's stop there for a second. Very clearly, our ancestor Stephen is declaring that Moshe was in a church in the wilderness. So one thing is, that knocks out that lie that those rappers was telling when they said ain't no church in the wild. part 2 of this that's very important for us to take away is the idea that if you go through the books of Moshe, there is no mention of a physical building that was actually put together out there in the wilderness that was large enough to house the 600,000 people who actually came out of Egypt into the wilderness under the leadership of Moshe. So in order to understand what this church actually is, then we need to go to the Greek word from which it was translated. And that word is ekklesia, and it breaks down into 2 parts. Ek, meaning out of or from, and klesia, meaning to call. So literally, when you put it together, it means the called out or the called out ones. So very clearly, we are not dealing with a physical building. We're dealing with a called out people. That's why it says it's the called out ones. Now, the next question to ask then is, well, who are these called out ones? Who are these called out people? Now, in order to get the answer to that, we need to go to another one of our ancestors. In fact, we need to go to our ancestor prophet known as Oshay. If you go to chapter 11, verse 1 of the book of Oshay, you're going to find that the Most High speaks through the words of our prophet and says, "When Yashrael was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt." So very clearly, the called out ones are the people of Yashrael, our people. Our people were called out of the bondage of Egypt by the Most High, and we were brought into the wilderness to establish a covenant with the Most High before the Mount Sinai. In fact, this goes perfect with what we just actually went over in Acts chapter 7, where our ancestor Stephen was describing how Moshe indeed was that man who was among the called out ones in the wilderness. So it all ties together perfectly. You got to understand, the word of the Most High actually interprets itself. We just have to do diligent study. Now, with this being said, whenever you hear the word church or ecclesia or congregation of the Most High or the saints of the Most High, you should be thinking of our people. That's right, those of us who are being called Negroes today, who are truly the Israelites. So, with this understanding, you've got to know that this calling out that the Most High performed for our people came with a responsibility. In fact, you're going to see in Devarim or Deuteronomy chapter 7 that the Most High told Moshe to let our people know that we are a holy or set apart people unto him, and that we were chosen to be a special people unto the Most High above all other people that are upon the face of the earth. So, very clearly, the Most High established a specific standing, a specific favor amongst our people before him. And he chose us for this duty. Now, many people to this day become very hostile when they hear our people claim that the Most High had chosen our nation to be this special people unto him, when it's right here written within the scriptures. In fact, you can even go to the book of Shemot or Exodus chapter 19. There you're going to find that the Most High also told Moshe to let our people know that we are a kingdom of priests and a holy or set apart nation unto him. So very clearly the Most High chose us as a specific nation unto him. He is dealing with a nation, a bloodline of people. This is extremely important to be aware of. In fact, many people may just argue and say, well, that's in the Old Testament, so it no longer matters. Well, I would tell people, first of all, there is no Old Testament / New Testament when it comes to our writings. The writings that our ancestors had transmitted down from generation to generation that are now in this collection of writings found within the book known as the Bible had no partition that said one side was Old Testament and another side was New Testament. That was something that was done after our scrolls had been stolen from our people and then collected and then reorganized and put into this form of the book known as the Bible today. But our scrolls were never divided in that way. That is totally alien to our ancestors. So as the Most High spoke his word to us, I need you to understand that he spoke unto us in the wilderness lively oracles. Now, if you find that in Acts chapter 7, lively oracles means living utterances. That means the words of the Most High were alive as he gave them to us. That means his words did not expire once he spoke them, but that meant that those words would actually go on to live and to cause things to come about. In fact, it's no different than what the Most High did at the time of creation. The very words that he spoke set things into position that we still witness today because those words are alive. So we still have the same laws of day and night that were given from the very beginning. Those are the very things that we still witness around us today because the words of the Most High continue to live on. In fact, you can even go to Acts chapter 17, verse 28, and you're going to find there the passage that states, "In him we live and move and have our being," because as you should know, our people live by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High. He forms everything through his word that happens. And so this will continue to happen even into the everlasting. This is the way we actually are sustained, through the word of the Most High. Everything in existence is sustained through the words of the Most High. So if that's not enough for you, then we should understand that those words at Moshe, where he told us by the words of the Most High that we were to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation unto him, did not stop at Moshe, because you can simply go into another writing in the so-called New Testament known as 1 Peter, which was actually written by our ancestor Kepha, whose name was translated into the Greek name Peter, where he writes to our people, "Ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, a peculiar people." So let's stop right there. Very clearly, our ancestor, Apostle Kepha, is writing the exact same words that Moshe was told to speak to our people of Yashrael at Mount Sinai. So the reason this is happening is because Kepha also was aware of who we are as a people. He knew that our oral tradition stated that we were to be a royal priesthood and a holy nation. In fact, that's not all he knew. If you go further into his writing, you will see that he says that you should show forth the praises of him who have called you out. So very clearly, Kepha also knew the oral tradition that stated that we are the called out ones of the Most High. So that's why he was able to write that we were to show forth the praises of him who has called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. See, because when we were called out of our bondage in Egypt, we were brought out of the darkness and the ignorance of our people's state at that point, and the bondage and the darkness that came with Egypt. But we were called into his light because when he established his covenant with our people in front of Mount Sinai, he had given us his light through giving us his laws, his statutes, his commandments, and his judgments. So very clearly, this calling out came with light. It came with actually a purpose. In fact, if you go to Exodus chapter 4:22, you're going to find that the Most High said, "Indeed, Yashrael is my son, even my firstborn." Those are the words he told Moshe to go and speak to Pharaoh when we were being delivered out of Egypt and we were going into the wilderness. So with that understanding, you should also go down to the next verse in Exodus or Shemot chapter 4. And when you get to verse 23, you're going to find that it says, "Let my son go that he may serve me." See, the Most High did not just give us this special status or this special favor. He actually gave us a special responsibility. And our responsibility as that kingdom of priests and that holy or set apart nation that he called us to be is to serve the Most High. That's right. We have that responsibility. So understand that when you understand our position as being the offspring of the Most High, that position did not just come to give us these perks and privileges without us fulfilling the purpose that the Most High gave us, which was actually what true church service actually is. See, people think church service is showing up at that physical meeting place and singing songs and hearing a bunch of scripture read out of context. However, that is not what church service actually is. Church service is what I just read in scripture. The fact that we were called to serve the Most High by keeping his laws, commandments, and statutes and judgments as he gave them to us. So if you understand that, the fact that the church is his nation of people, of Yashrael, us, the people who are being called Negroes today, that is the church part. The service part is actually what we were called to do. We were called to keep his laws, commandments, statutes, and judgments as he gave them to our people to live by. So that is church service. People have gotten it totally misconstrued and out of context. In fact, just to show you that what was spoken by Moshe to our people of Yashrael in Exodus chapter 19 did not change even up to the days of our apostle ancestor, Kephah, in 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9. You'll even find in the book of Revelations chapter 5 verses 10 that we are still going to be called that same title in the end, because the Messiah, through his redemptive work, through his blood, has actually brought our people back out of our current scatterings, because we are scattered amongst the nations today. But he is to bring us back to our proper position as the kings and the priests who are to reign on this earth according to scripture. You'll find that once again in Revelations chapter 5 verses 10. So as you can see, this is very consistent throughout the scriptures, but somehow people have not paid attention to this. People have not read and listened to the writings that were transmitted by our ancestors through the unction of the Spirit of the Most High Yahuwah, who gave these words to our people, who gave these commands to our people, who gave these prophecies to our people. So now, as we start to see this truth unfold, I hope we all can see now that the true church indeed is the people of Yashrael, us the Israelites, those of us who are being called Negroes today. So I hope that has been helpful to you. Thanks for listening. Shalom, shalom. And make sure you join me for part 2 of this series of what or who is the church according to the book. Because in part 2, we're going to deal with the correction of the called out ones. And this is a very important part of our journey that you definitely need to be aware of, because it's going to help you see how we ended up where we are today. Once again, shalom, shalom, my people. Thank you for listening.